You become like the people you surround yourself with, not in theory, not in some intellectual sense, but in action, in behavior, in energy, in expectancy. You become like the discussions you hear most, like the habits you witness daily, like the norms that everyone around you adopts. And if you're surrounded by individuals who don't challenge themselves, you won't be challenged either. You can have the finest intentions, the strongest will, the grandest dreams, but if the people around you normalize comfort, if they glorify mediocrity, if they hide behind excuses and settle for good enough, their influence will drag you back, subtly, inevitably. Because influence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a secret commitment not to grow. The easy crowd is attractive. They're lovely, they're comfy, they're available, and they ask nothing from you. They don't demand more, they don't push, they don't raise inquiries. They don't ask for anything that would destabilize the status quo. That's the danger. You might spend years in an easy crowd and think you're advancing, only to wake up and find you've been looping the same patterns with the same people who never expected you to improve. Because growth is not the default. Growth demands stress. It requires friction. It takes the company of individuals who are not wowed by your potential, but instead expect you to live up to it. People that refuse to let you settle. People who hold you to a higher standard, not out of judgment, but out of respect. You don't grow in comfort. You grow in difficulty. And challenge often comes in the form of people. People who think differently, people who act with purpose, people who are relentless with their standards, people who live in accordance with the ideals they preach. You get around those folks, and something inside you starts to stretch. At first, it's uncomfortable. You feel behind, you feel exposed, you notice how much you've been faking, how much energy you've wasted trying to look like you have it all together. But that discomfort is vital because it pulls away the illusory comfort of being uncontested. It confronts you with the difference between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. And that's where genuine transformation begins, not when you avoid that gap, but when you face it. When you quit choosing folks who let you stay the same. When you quit seeking the crowd that flatters you. When you cease filtering your ambition to match the restrictions of people around you. When you stop being frightened to outgrow those who refuse to develop. Because there's a price for staying in the easy crowd. The price is your potential. The price is your progress. The price is the version of you that will never be produced because you keep shrinking to fit the room. And finally, you either rise or you resent. You resent the people who kept you back, even if you were the one who stayed. You resent yourself for not leaving when you knew you had to. But there's another path. A harsher one, a lonelier one at times, but it leads somewhere worthwhile. It's the route of choosing progress above comfort, the road of stepping away from the easy crowd, not in wrath but with awareness. Not because you think you're better, but because you know you need something different. You need individuals who broaden your thinking, raise your standards, and challenge you to show up in new ways. Those folks exist, but they're not always visible. They're not noisy. They're not here to save you. They're building. They're evolving. They're leading their lives with meaning. And when you find them, they won't accept your excuses. They'll challenge them. They won't soothe your stagnation. They'll wonder why you're not moving. That's how you'll know you're in the correct place. Because real growth comes with pressure. And pressure rarely comes from folks who merely tell you what you want to hear. It comes from people who remind you of realities you already know, but haven't acted on. From those who don't require you to stay the same merely to feel good about themselves. People who aren't threatened by your evolution, but moved by it. If you actually want to improve, don't follow the easy crowd. Enter the room that intimidates you a little. The room where you're not the smartest, not the strongest, nor the best prepared. Enter the area where your excuses won't hold, where your potential is clear. But your comfort isn't. That's where growth lives. That's where you expand. That's where you meet the version of yourself that's been waiting beyond ease. Growth isn't accidental. It doesn't sneak in as you relax. It comes when you decide, over and over, to go into situations that purify you, stretch you, call you out and call you higher. Spaces that push back against your current identity. Most people never think about the environments they choose. They default to what's familiar, who's nearby, who seems comfortable. They say, "These are just my people," or "We've been friends forever," or "I'm just being loyal." But progress doesn't care how long you've known someone. It asks only one thing: are they helping you grow, or are they helping you stay the same? It's a tricky question, because people closest to you are frequently the hardest to appraise. They've lived your story, shared your highs and lows, but occasionally, they grow hooked to a version of you that no longer fits. Or worse, the version you're attempting to outgrow. And it's subtle. Not always obvious. Not someone yelling at you to give up. Sometimes it's a look when you fantasize out loud, a sarcastic comment that cuts deeper than it should, or just a lack of energy when you talk about a new idea. And you feel it, that quiet nudge to play tiny, the gentle suggestion to keep unchanged. At first, you dismiss it, you brush it off. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. And maybe they didn't. But over time, those moments accumulate. They begin to shape your energy. You start holding back in little ways. You begin to alter your words. You quit dreaming out loud. You shrink to match the room. And before long, your existence becomes centered on fitting in rather than leveling up. One day you wake up and discover you've been walking in circles. That your aspirations became memories. That your potential is buried behind years of people pleasing and permission seeking. But that awareness is a gift. It gives you a chance to choose again, to increase your standards, to stop settling for environments that reward comfort and punish growth, to stop preserving relationships established on your quiet, your boundaries, or your readiness to play small. You do not owe your old audience your future. You don't need to explain your choice to grow. You never have to apologize for evolving. Growth isn't betrayal, it's obedience. Obedience to your calling, to your potential, to the person you know you're supposed to become. And yes, choosing a new setting is uncomfortable. You'll feel lonely, misunderstood. You'll wonder if you're being too harsh, too selfish, if you're abandoning people. And that's okay. That soreness is an indication that you're headed in the right way. It indicates you're no longer living by others' expectations. You're not responsible for their comfort. You are accountable for your own expansion. And sometimes, such expansion needs separation, not because you're above everyone, but because you're no longer willing to construct your life on a foundation that can't hold who you're becoming. There are individuals out there who will understand, who won't flinch when you boost your requirements, who won't be threatened when you change, who will match your drive, who will push your pace, who expect greatness, not because they demand it, but because they embody it. That's the kind of crowd you need. The ones who won't let you coast, who ask sharper inquiries, who raise their hand when you say anything mediocre, who don't nod along merely to be pleasant, who lift you higher, who hear your justifications before you utter them and call you forward. And those people won't always be easy to be around. They'll frustrate you. They'll stretch you more than you want to be stretched. They'll question patterns you're still hanging onto. But that's the goal. That's the expense of real growth. That's what high-level surroundings feel like. If everyone around you is okay with your behaviors, your thinking, your words, it's time to check your circle. Because true progress demands real pressure. You need people who make you think, who make you pause, who shake up your comfort zone. And when you discover them, remain close. Learn from them. Watch them. Study how they walk, how they think, how they choose. Because the proximity principle is real. You climb to the level of the environment you're in. If you stay in environments where your current standard is honored, you'll never develop the future you want. You don't need a multitude, you need a few strong individuals. People who live what they preach, who embody their words, and who are more committed to truth than approval. These are the individuals who won't let you lie to yourself, who won't let you drift, and who won't take mediocrity from you. Not because they're judging you, but because they respect you. Real growth doesn't come from being liked, it comes from being challenged. Growth demands sharpness, it creates sparks, it reduces dullness, it requires friction, but what remains is sharper, stronger, more effective, and more connected with the life you genuinely want to lead. When you feel pressurized around high-level people, don't run, stay in it. Sit in it. Grow through it. That pressure isn't rejection, it's an invitation. An invitation to step up, to elevate your standard. to stop playing small, to stop seeking acceptance, and to start living with intention. Growth rarely feels wonderful in the moment. In hindsight, it's evident. You can see how the tough events made you stronger and how the strain formed you. But while you're in it, it's messy, uncertain, and uncomfortable. The reason most individuals don't grow is because they don't know how to stay with that discomfort long enough to reach the other side. The relaxed crowd makes that comfort irresistible. They normalize staying the same. They praise your limitations, laugh at your excuses, and urge you to settle for less. They tell you not to take yourself too seriously, to be practical, to relax down. And if you're not careful, you might begin to believe them. You'll start to call your potential too much, or label your ambition as ungrateful. You'll start lowering your goals, not because they're unreachable, but because your environment doesn't encourage you to strive for them. When you step away from that gathering, the excuses get louder. At first, they'll try to urge you to return. You're being dramatic. You're being disloyal. Or, you think you're better than everyone. These are the words of people who refuse to change, trying to stop you from doing so. If you listen, you'll go back. And while turning back doesn't seem like failure at first, it feels like comfort. But later it turns into regret. Growth doesn't occur in echo chambers. It happens when your assumptions are tested, your beliefs are challenged, and you sit next to someone more ahead, not just financially or professionally, but psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. When you feel yourself stretching just by being near them, that's growth. That's the friction. That tiny discomfort you feel when you discover you're the least disciplined person in the room. That's growth. That feeling of being behind, of knowing there's more work to do, that want to level up, that's growth calling you, attempting to shake you awake. It's not there to embarrass you, it's there to activate you. If you never experience that stress, it's not because you've conquered your life. It's likely because you've surrounded yourself with individuals who expect nothing from you. When no one around you challenges you, it's easy to delude yourself. You persuade yourself you're doing enough, that your current level is fine, that improvement can wait. But it can't. Deep down, you know it can't. You feel the stress when you lie down at night. You feel the discomfort when you witness someone genuinely living their life, understanding you've just been coasting. You feel the aggravation when you watch the same old patterns repeating, with only the date on the calendar changing. So what do? You shift. You surround yourself with people that challenge you to raise your standards. People who won't cheer you on when you settle. People who aren't scared to say, that's not enough. They expect more, not because they're hard to please, but because they've seen the potential that's unlocked when someone decides to show up fully. When you find those people, don't compare, don't envy, study, don't shrink, rise. Use their presence to fuel your own advancement. Let their discipline challenge your procrastination. Let their attention disclose your distractions. Let their standards lead you to rethink yours, not to feel less, but to understand there's more within you. Because there is. You've always known it, even when you attempted to convince yourself differently. Even when you seemed to be pleased, telling yourself everything was fine, even when you softly agreed with pleasant talks, while something deep within of you was screaming for more. That voice won't go away. The longer you ignore it, the more restless you grow. It's not simply ambition, it's alignment. You were designed for more, not for fame or approval, but for growth, strength, clarity, leadership, and ownership. And you won't find that in settings where no one expects those things from you. You have to break free. You need to surround yourself with individuals who move differently. Those who walk into a room and don't wait to be led. People who are focused on large matters, not sidetracked by trivial ones. People who live in truth, who function in excellence, who would rather lose friends than sacrifice their integrity. Those folks aren't rare, but they are busy. They don't have time for passive energy. They don't have time for those who talk one way and live another. They don't have time for useless small talk. They're builders, thinkers, movers. And when they find someone who's serious, they'll make time for you. So, become that person. Stop waiting for someone else to lead you. Lead yourself. Stop waiting for the proper group to come to you. Elevate yourself so the right group notices you. Stop asking for a seat at someone else's table and start establishing your own. A life built on ideals, not ego, on progress, not validation, on standards, not convenience. When you take this route, the energy surrounding you alters. You begin to attract fresh opportunities. Conversations change. Your own reflection alters. The individual who formerly settled for the easy crowd is now developing something different. Not better than others, but better than yesterday. Real growth demands real honesty. Not the type that looks nice on paper, but the kind that stings. It's the kind of honesty that makes you pause mid-sentence because you realize the words you're uttering don't connect with the truth in your heart. It's the honesty that admits, I've been playing small, without adding explanations or reasons. You cannot grow while lying to yourself, and one of the easiest ways to do so is to surround yourself with people who are doing the same. They won't challenge you, they won't call out your language. They'll nod, agree, and keep you stuck in the same place. Not because they're evil, but because they're guarding their own comfort too. The truth is, the easy crowd doesn't desire growth, not really. They desire approval, comfort, and company in their complacency. The instant you start thinking, living, and speaking differently, they feel exposed, sometimes discreet, sometimes with sarcasm, sometimes with distance. Be ready for it, because your growth reflects back to them. Not everyone is willing to look in that mirror. When you break your patterns, you expose the others who are still devoted to theirs. Not everyone is ready for that kind of contrast, but you don't progress by maintaining other people's comfort. You grow by choosing integrity over acceptability, by living according to your own principles, not someone else's boundaries. You evolve by being more loyal to your future than to your past. And that allegiance gets tested every time you make an upgrade, every time you say, I no longer accept this. You interrupt your own pattern, and everyone watching. But if you're not attentive, you can mistake their discomfort for a sign that you're doing anything wrong. You're not. Their discomfort is not your concern, it's their opportunity. Whether they take it or not is not up to you. What's up to you is how honest you're willing to be. How often you're willing to confront the voice in your head that says, this is good enough, when you know it's not. How eager are you to stay in rooms where your present level isn't impressive? Those are the rooms you need. Rooms where the standard is high, performance is normal, clarity is consistent, and excellence is expected, not simply encouraged. Those rooms don't let you drift. They won't allow your ego settle in. Those rooms push you to choose evolve or get out. Pressure is healthy. It reveals where you're sliding, emphasizes what you've been avoiding, and forces you to confront what you've been tolerating. When you respond to that pressure with accountability, instead of defensiveness, everything starts to transform. But most people don't make it past that point. They sense the pressure and move away. They consider it toxic, unrealistic, or overly intense. What they're really saying is, I'm not ready to let go of my excuses. But they won't confess it because it's simpler to blame the environment than to address what the environment reveals. You have to be distinctive. You must be the one who stays, who feels the tension and leans into it, who realizes that progress is supposed to feel uncomfortable. The friction isn't a clue that something's wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. Once you normalize that pressure, everything becomes easier. Because now, you won't be astonished when progress is challenging. You won't be startled when obstacles come. You won't be thrown off when your views are tested. You'll expect it, embrace it, and even welcome it. In that mindset, you stop chasing motivation and begin developing constancy. You cease relying on others for assistance and start becoming that support. You stop wondering who will push you and start leading yourself, not out of arrogance, but from alignment. Your life is no longer influenced by your environment, it's led by your standard. But you still need the correct environment to sustain that standard. Because even the strongest people can weaken in the wrong crowd. Even the clearest vision can be blurred by the wrong discussions. Even the sharpest focus can dull if you continually showing up in settings that don't challenge you to stay sharp. So, you stay intentional. You protect your attention. You quit haggling with those who want the old version of you. You quit explaining your choices to individuals who aren't trying to progress. You quit waiting to be understood by individuals who never took the effort to understand themselves. Instead, you surround yourself with individuals who move with purpose. People who aren't here to impress but to develop. People who would rather be consistent than famous. People that challenge you, not because they question you, but because they trust in you. Those folks won't chase you. They're too concentrated on becoming who they're meant to be. But when you begin moving in that way, you'll start recognizing them, you'll begin attracting them, you'll start creating with them. And ultimately, the crowd will alter. The cadence of your life will shift. At some point, the version of you who once clung to the easy crowd, the version who longed for comfort, validation, and permission, will be gone. Not because they vanished, but because you outgrew them. Outgrowing individuals isn't cruel, it's unavoidable. When you choose growth, you choose separation, not separation from love, devotion, or legacy, but from the version of yourself that can no longer stay where it's comfortable. Breaking free from the routines, the expectations, and the roles you once played in other people's life is a task. When those roles no longer fit, tension occurs. People may remark you've changed, and yes, you have. That's the purpose. The previous version of you, the one who always agreed, stayed silent, and played small to keep the peace, no longer exists. And you won't apologize for it because the cost of faking is simply too expensive, and you've already paid it long enough. When you were part of the easy set, you thought keeping things light and comfortable was the purpose. But now, you've realized that comfort without growth is merely stagnation. Approval without accountability is meaningless, and relationships without substance are just distractions pretending to be true ties. Now, you desire more, not more drama, not more control, but more alignment, more truth, more challenge, more connections with people who are building something, becoming something, and doing something. People who aren't scared by your aspirations since they have their own. Yes, the change can feel lonely. When you step away from the mob that kept you little, there's silence at first, then space, and doubt starts to seep in. You wonder if you made the correct decision. You miss the familiarity, even if it wasn't good for you. It was predictable, and predictability feels comfortable. But comfort isn't safety. Comfort is just repetition. Growth is what keeps you safe, not the absence of fear, but the presence of strength, clarity, and the profound awareness that no matter where you go or who departs, you always have yourself. And you're not scared to stand alone in pursuit of something higher. That's when you begin to notice something different. New individuals, new rooms, new discussions. They don't just emerge because you hope for them, they show up because you made space. You created room for the next chapter by leaving the one that was ended behind. And these new individuals, they don't want you to hide your brightness. They don't flinch when you talk about progress, and they don't laugh at your vision for the future. They listen. They challenge you. They hold you accountable for your words because they've done their own work, and they expect you to do yours. This is the room you belong in, not because you're already at their level, but because you're willing to get there. You're willing to be the least experienced, the least disciplined, and the one who doesn't have all the answers, yet still refuses to stop asking the appropriate questions. You don't improve by always being the most impressive person in the room. You improve by being humbled, by surrounding yourself with people who are better, sharper, and stronger than you. That's what motivates you to grow, to elevate, and it peels away the ego to show the genuine work. And that's the kind of truth the easy crowd never offered you. Not surface-level honesty, but profound, meaningful truth, the type founded in genuine compassion, the sort that says, I see more in you than you see in yourself, and I won't let you settle here. That's what leadership is about. Great leaders don't coddle you, they confront you. They don't comfort your excuses, they upset them. They don't compete with you, they develop you. And if you want to grow, you have to learn how to receive that sort of leadership. Even when it's difficult, even when it's inconvenient, and even when it would be easier to go back to the people who never pushed you to expand. So, you stay in the room, even when you feel behind, even when you're tempted to shrink. You stay. You listen, you learn, you level up. Because growth doesn't always feel like expansion. Sometimes it feels like exposure. And that exposure is vital because you can't repair what you hide. You can't upgrade what you refuse to reveal. The crowd you chose will either support your expansion or pressure you to stay small. If you've spent years with people who expected nothing from you, it's no wonder your outcomes haven't altered. But you're not that person anymore. You're selecting differently now. You're choosing alignment above agreement. You're choosing the friction that sharpens you instead of the stillness that numbs you. You're picking voices that expand you rather those that flatter you, because you've determined that being loved isn't worth being constrained. And with that decision, you embark into a new season. One where you cease looking back, one where your energy is put in becoming. You stop explaining your growth and start marching in it openly, clearly, unashamedly. And as you keep pushing forward, you'll find that the loneliness passes. It gets replaced by depth. By folks who see you and still expect more. By relationships that grow as you do. By conversations that push you rather than assist you avoid thinking. And at those moments, you'll realize that leaving the easy crowd was the beginning of your freedom. Not because they were bad, but because they weren't right for the version of you that you're developing now. They required less, but you're finally willing to give more. Growth isn't merely a phase. It's not a box you check off. It's a lifestyle, and that lifestyle takes regular recalibration. Because just when you believe you've reached your next level, you'll learn that level comes with new questions, new expectations, and new duties. The easy set will try to convince you that you've done enough, but high-level living means your notion of enough constantly increasing. You begin to comprehend that the more you grow, the more capacity you build, and the more capacity you build, the more you can carry, not only for yourself, but for others. You become the one people go to for clarity, for solidity, for leadership, and that role is earned, not claimed. It's gained through constancy, through alignment, through staying in the fire long after others would have walked out. But here's the truth. Every level of advancement will come with a test. Not a test from the world, but a test from yourself. A test to see if the new standard is real or if it's merely transitory. This is a test to see if you'll stay true to your word, even when there's no one to hold you accountable, no applause to keep you going, and no recognition of your effort. This is where your perspective is developed, since the easy crowd makes progress look like a performance. But high-level life demands that growth becomes part of who you are. It should be something you live, even in quiet. You should embody it even when it's inconvenient. You return to it not because someone else is watching, but because you are. That type of self-leadership gives a tranquility that isn't dependent on external validation. It comes from integrity. Knowing that you are who you say you are and no longer outsourcing your identity to the perceptions of others. That tranquility makes you dangerous, but not in an arrogant manner, in a grounded sense, because nothing moves you like it previously did. When you live this way, your relationships change. You're no longer seeking connections based on convenience, you're looking for congruence. You no longer need people to carry you, you carry your own weight. And in doing so, you attract people who do the same, not codependents, but collaborators and builders. The easy crowd required you to play a role, to keep things smooth. The growing crowd requires you to show up as your actual self, even if it's messy, even if it's raw. They're not interested in the mask you wear, they're here for the objective. And if your objective is powerful, you'll find that energy attracts energy. But be prepared, this energy isn't passive. The folks you'll encounter in this new realm don't need small talk or extensive explanations. They're moving, building, and chasing clarity like their lives rely on it, because they do. And if you're aligned with that, they'll recognize you. When that happens, you won't have to force the relationship. It will flow naturally. People with a goal don't waste time trying to impress. They collaborate, they elevate, and they bring out the best in each other because they've each done their own inner work. That's the setting you want to be in. However, to stay in that room, you've got to keep evolving. You can't cling to who you were, even if that version of you helped you get through bad seasons. You can enjoy your past without being enslaved to it. You may honor your hardship without recreating it. You can carry the lessons without revisiting the limits. Every time you cling to an old identity, you generate friction with your present chance. Every time you try to merge old habits with new ambitions, you weaken both. At some point, you have to let go, not because it's easy, but because you comprehend the repercussions of holding on. You've felt the remorse and witnessed the price of keeping the same. If you want the reward of growth, you must surrender the comfort of stagnation. This means entering into seasons when you're unqualified but devoted, where you're learning as you go, and where your belief outpaces your comfort. That's the way. And no, it's not simple, but you weren't built for easy. You were built for evolution. And evolution doesn't occur when you're surrounded by individuals who only tell you what you want to hear. It happens when you're with folks who speak the truth, who hold up the mirror, and who don't need to yell because their life already speaks volumes. When they do speak to you, you listen because you've seen how they live. That's the mentorship you need, not popularity, but insight, experience. People who've paid the price and are prepared to show you what it looks like. Not so you can emulate them, but so you can learn what it takes to travel your own path with clarity and conviction. And you'll find that these folks don't push themselves for acclaim. They do it because they've seen what happens when you don't. They know the misery of living beneath your potential. They realize the cost of bending your truth to stay loved. They know the emptiness of easy crowds, and they'll never go back. So, when you meet them, don't try to impress them. Show up honest, show up real, show up ready to do the work. Because when you do, something profound happens. You stop asking permission and start practicing present. You stop trying to be seen and start living seen. As you mature, you'll find the less you talk about it, the more clear it becomes. The proof is in your consistency, the evidence is in your enthusiasm. And soon, those who formerly questioned your direction will begin to watch your discipline and wonder how you kept going. Divider. Not intelligence, not talent, not background. Discipline. Because in a world where most people quit, discipline keeps you grounded when the novelty fades, when the struggle grows, and when the praise stops. Discipline is the anchor that protects your potential from drifting back to mediocre. And discipline is not developed in easy, it's forged in resistance. It's strengthened in repetition and made achievable by high standards. Personal, forceful, non-negotiable standards that are determined by the version of you you're becoming, not the version of you you've been. The easy crowd can't teach you that. They don't work on standards, they operate on sentiments. If it's convenient, they'll show up. If it's applauded, they'll commit. But the instant it gets hard, they shift, they flinch, they look for the shortcut. And when you're around that energy long enough, you begin to absorb it. Not because you want to, but because energy is contagious, no matter how diligent you are. If your environment doesn't challenge you to stay sharp, your edge will dull. If you don't make a choice, comfort or consistency, you can't have both. You can't emphasize comfort and expect amazing results. You can't seek convenience and still profess to be committed. Eventually, something has to be sacred. And for those who progress, that sacred thing is discipline. Discipline that arrives before you feel ready. Discipline that honors vows in quiet. Discipline that acts without motive. Discipline that doesn't need an audience to be genuine. Discipline built not on emotion, but on identity. You're either disciplined or inconsistent. There's no middle ground, no gray area. Your environment will either encourage your discipline or fuel your excuses. You must make that choice daily. Choose your people, your language, your standards, the ones that raise the version of you you're becoming. When you choose discipline over convenience consistently, it becomes normal. It becomes part of how you think, how you act, how you decide. It becomes embedded in your story. And that's when others begin to notice. Not because you're louder, but because your consistency says volumes. The most accomplished aren't always the most gifted, they're the most consistent. The ones that keep sharp when others slack, modest when others flex, learning while others plateau. Discipline gives them their advantage, and it can give you yours, provided you stop searching for methods to lighten the route, and instead focus on strengthening yourself. Because true strength is forged in the quiet moments, in the dark, before results appear, before anyone observes, before validation comes up. That's when it's built, when it's silent, when no one's celebrating, when it's just you, your standards, and your decision. That's what differentiates leaders from followers. Leaders don't wait for accountability. They hold themselves accountable. They don't require masses to act, reminders to perform, or permission to excel. They get up every day and choose it, and because they chose it, they grow, even when results are delayed, even when no one understands, even when the pressure is enormous. Growth negotiable. And when growth is non-negotiable, your life begins to move. Not instantly, because consistency multiplies. One tiny deed repeated with excellence increases. One clear guideline observed in every case produces structure. That framework produces momentum, and momentum breeds belief. Belief generates identity. And once your identity is solid, everything changes. That's when the people around you start to change because your presence challenges them. Not with arrogance, but with energy. Those who are serious will lean in, those who are curious will rise, and those who are comfortable will back away. And that's exactly what you want. You don't construct your life by being acceptable by everyone. You build it on alignment, on character, on truth. And truth doesn't always keep crowds. It generates devotion from the right individuals, the right leaders, the right builders, the right reflections. People who won't allow you to coast. People who expect excellence. People who don't tolerate excuses. People who hold you accountable to the standards you've set. That's the place where discipline thrives. That's the setting where momentum is born. That's the setting where legacy is forged. And yes, it's harder, but you're not here for easy. You're here to evolve. You're here to become the kind of person that doesn't just get outcomes, but sustains them. The kind of person who doesn't just level up once, but stays there. The kind of person who doesn't only visit greatness, but embodies it. There comes a moment in every life when a person must select the kind of legacy they'll leave. Not just the accomplishments, not just the numbers, nor just the image. It's the internal example, the pattern of how they lived, how they led themselves, how they treated others, how they managed hardship. And that moment doesn't come at the end. It comes every day in the decisions you make, in the locations you show up, in the people you surround yourself with. If you're still walking with an easy crowd, you're outsourcing your legacy to convenience. You're throwing your life's direction over to individuals who don't care where you're headed. People who love who you used to be because it's easier for them to accept. People who keep you focused on what you've already done, instead of what you can yet become. And the more you stay there, the tougher it becomes to break free. That's why most people never develop something great, not because they lack skill or time, but because they lack the confidence to break away from the crowd that expects little of them. If you're going to live a life that matters, a life that advances things forward, a life that lifts others, you cannot do it surrounded by people who value your comfort more than your character. You cannot accomplish it in a circle that would rather see you little and joyful than stretched and serious. Greatness offends the average. You will be misunderstood. You will be misquoted. You will be labeled. When you move differently, the people who stay still will try to explain it, and their explanation will reveal more about them than it does about you. But you don't live for their comfort. You live for clarity, alignment, and your assignment, the reason you're here, the influence you're meant to make, the people you're meant to aid, the example you're meant to set. And to achieve that, you must be willing to walk away from individuals who won't walk with you. Not because they're horrible, but because they're not moving. They don't desire more. They don't believe more is even attainable. If you try to drag them along, you'll slow down, burn out, and compromise. There's a reason why the people who transform the world often speak about solitude. Growth will initially isolate you before it connects you. It will break you down before it raises you up. It will take you through seasons where your only companion is discipline, your only cheerleader is your vision, and your only anchor is your word. But on the other side of that season lies strength. And with that strength comes influence. Not because you attempted to garner followers, but because your consistency gained you trust. Your clarity drew alignment. Your commitment generated momentum. And suddenly, you realize you've produced something others want to be around. Something that elevates people. Something that no longer chases crowds because it builds them. A fresh crowd, a stronger crowd, one where growth is the norm, challenge is embraced, and quality is commonplace. But none of that happens until you choose to leave, to walk away from comfort, from approval, from the version of yourself that formerly made people feel comfortable. You leave behind the individuals who only clapped when you stayed quiet. You leave behind situations that kept you occupied but never made you better. There's a price to growth, but there's also a reward. The satisfaction isn't simply in the success, it's in the alignment. It's about getting up every day knowing you're becoming the person you were supposed to be. It's in the tranquility that comes from knowing you're no longer living beneath your potential merely to keep connected to individuals who never planned to progress. You weren't built for smallness. You weren't made to be background noise. You weren't designed to float through life expecting to be loved enough to be tolerated. You were designed to lead, to build, to create, to challenge, to expand, and that doesn't happen in simple spaces. So you raise the standard again. You cease describing your growth. You cease apologizing for your growth. You cease limiting your remarks to meet the crowd you've outgrown. You talk with clarity. You move with purpose. You decide with boldness. You surround yourself with people who don't just claim to seek progress but embody it. And that becomes your new normal, a life where growth isn't a goal, it's a lifestyle. Where difficulty isn't feared, it's required. Where discomfort isn't avoided, it's desired. Since that's where you're honed, that's where you align. That's where you become someone whose presence strengthens others just by being around them. You've heard it before, don't join an easy crowd, you won't grow. Now you understand why. The easy crowd doesn't care if you become who you were meant to be. They don't push your thinking, expand your habits, or confront your tendencies. They just let you exist. They let you repeat. They let you shrink. For a while, that feels safe. But ultimately, you'll feel something else: frustration, restlessness, a slow aching that says, there's more to you than this. That murmur won't go away. You can drown it out for a while with diversion, routine, or comfort, but it always returns. Deep within you, there's a component that already understands your true potential. It understands you're not here to play tiny. The longer you reject that inner truth, the further you stray from your own life and your own self. The more you disconnect, the harder it gets to understand who you truly are. But that inner voice is not there to threaten you. It's an invitation. It's inviting you to level up, to go in a new direction, to leave behind what no longer supports your progress, and to enter into spaces that stretch you. It pulls you toward topics that challenge you, and circles that refine you. You don't develop in ease, you grow in honesty. You grow in locations that push you, in circumstances where the standard is higher than your comfort zone. In these situations, people aren't wowed by your potential, they expect you to fulfill it. Yes, that entails walking away from what feels familiar. It means letting go of roles you've outgrown and enjoying being misunderstood. But the expense of remaining tiny is far greater than the discomfort of stepping into your greatness. Every time you choose comfort over advancement, you're telling yourself you're not ready. You're programming your mind to want safety rather than expansion. You're teaching yourself that approbation counts more than development. But every time you choose progress over comfort, you're building something powerful: trust in yourself, discipline, character, and alignment. These decisions progressively form who you become, not someone who hopes for growth, but someone who actively decides to produce it. This is your moment. No more waiting, no more shrinking, no more blending in to keep comfortable. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to know everything all. You only need to be strong and honest enough to act on what you already know. The truth is, you already know what you need to do. You know which environments no longer align with your potential. You know which discussions tire you. You know who brings out the best in you and who doesn't. So, make the call. Raise the bar, not out of anger, but from a place of clarity and dedication to the future version of yourself. That version will look back one day and say, that was the moment everything changed. From this point forward, that future you isn't a faraway dream, it's a blueprint. Every decision, every standard, every struggle pushes you closer to the person you're destined to become. You don't need a crowd, you need truth. You don't need applause, you need alignment. You don't need permission, you need consistency. Once you embrace that, you will grow daily, deeply, and unmistakably.